Hi, welcome back to Mixed Media Creations with me, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill. Today we have an art journal tutorial. When I sat down in my studio to create, I had no idea what I was going to create. But I started, and this is what ended up. I love it. Follow me on Instagram. See what I'm up to day by day. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting the link in the bottom right-hand corner. Also, please share the video with your friends and leave a comment in the description box below. So today, instead of my mixed media book or a regular canvas, I am going to work on a canvas board. This one is Michael's brand, but you can buy them at the dollar store as well. This is 8 by 10 and I've pre-gessoed it. So when I sat down here, kind of grabbed some of my colored papers with leftover paint, gel prints, deli papers, and I was drawn to this, and this is what inspired me. I love the mix of the blue and that kind of limey green. So then I went through my gel prints and colored papers and collage papers that I have on deli paper that I created and pulled out things that would fit this color scheme. So if you don't know what to start with a color. Find a piece of scrapbook paper or a picture that you're inspired by. I also grabbed my folder full of tissue paper, dictionary papers, music papers, as well as my own do-it-yourself tissue papers with stamped images. So I'm just getting started here and I'm ripping pieces up into interesting shapes. I really don't have a plan here. I want to get some of this color down there, but I also want some text and I just want to build interest in my background. I don't like straight edges, so I tend to rip that all off. I like to combine papers as well. The one on the bottom left-hand corner is a heavier weight paper, whereas the one on the top is on deli paper. And they collage differently and they give a different look. Now, I'm not sure why, but I was drawn to this discarded gel print that I had punched out circles from. And this posed a little bit of a problem later on. But I kind of always wanted to give that a try. Now, right about there, when I stuck that text underneath, I thought, oh, I want to see some text poking out of those circles. And so I lift everything up, and I'm working very hard to get text behind each and every one of these circles. And at some point, I decide to switch it up to music paper. In the end, this ends up adding texture, but you don't see the music paper. But that's what happens when you really have no idea where you're going. If I was doing this again, I probably would skip that step. But then again, maybe not. I'm going to have to think about that. I'm kind of trying to build a frame with the colored paper a little bit. So I'm going, the lower left hand, I'm going to make kind of an L at there, and then I'm going to make an L at the top, and then fill it in with other interesting papers. Now, because the papers are different weights, it adds some really interesting texture along the way. And as you layer them, you're going to end up with texture. Now, I stay with this blue-green family. I'm using that as my inspiration. And as I was saying, you could use magazine strips here, scrapbook papers, old Christmas cards, and just take your inspiration from the colors that they use. And that works especially good if you're a beginner and you don't know what colors go together. Use what they've done, in a magazine or on scrapbook paper, and use that as the jumping off point. So I'm really enjoying this process. I find this very relaxing to rip and glue down paper. And, you know, if you're not sure about the whole collaging step, give it a try. It's taken me a long time to truly embrace collage as a way of putting down a lot of interest and color in the beginning light layers, but I'm totally enjoying it. I'm using gel medium to adhere this down. So right about here I decide I want to use this onion blossom stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. It was a gift that I won in a contest they ran, and I have yet to use it, but I've dreamt about using it, so I guess today is the day. So I decide I'm just going to add some more interest, especially in any areas that don't have the collage papers on them. And this kind of makes the whole page work together. I'll put a link to the texture stamps that I'm using. They're some of my favorites. And if you're on a limited budget, they are the ones that I would use because I get a lot of use out of them. So taking my cue from the colors that were in my gel prints, in my collage papers, I'm grabbing some blues and greens. Now I grabbed this dish, I had my snack in there, apparently I still have my snack in there, and I just put water in there just to dip in and dilute. Because as typical, my water container is just really muddy and dark, and I didn't want to distort the color. So I just want to brighten this up a little bit and get some of this lime green color in various places. Then I grabbed my Prussian blue, and this is from it's a Grumbacher brand. It is one of my favorite colors. And then something wonderful happens when you mix the Prussian blue, which is wonderful on its own. When you mix it with that limey green, it just takes this other tone in. It takes it on, and I just love it. So here I'm just putting some of the paints on. Some I want darker, some I want lighter. I want it to catch in the grooves of where the ripped pages are, where the texture is, you know, so I'm just kind of adding as I go. Now my goal here, because I'm going to be stenciling on, is to really not leave any white space in here. So I want the entire canvas board to have color on it. Now right about now I'm thinking I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those circles. They're there, so you know I have an option. Either I'm going to end up kind of painting over it or collaging over it and getting rid of them, or I'm going to have to make them kind of a focal point. And at this point, I had no idea what I was going to do. So I'm kind of painting them. They're not really blending in, but I'm just moving ahead. Fake it till you make it. So I'm thinking I'm going to want to make these a little bit more of a focal point. So that's why you see me dabbing off the paint. Unclear where I'm going to go. I'm going to give this a dry, and then I can always come back and add more and build layers of color. So now I'm just grab the palette knife, and with those same two colors of paint, I'm just going to spread it on with the palette knife. And I think I switched to a different palette knife, a smaller one that seems to work better. I'm just absolutely loving the look of this background. These two colors together just sing. The thing that I don't like here are those three circles. I'm perplexed. I'm thinking, what am I going to do with them? What am I going to do with them? So I grab this onion blossom stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, and I am masking off the parts that I don't want. Now, because the background is so dark, stenciling with black isn't going to work. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to stencil with white, and these are going to be light and, really lighten up and give an airy feel to this. And then I go to reach my white paint. And I think I'm going to use the Crafter's Workshop, this Shimmery Goodness. It's thick, it's a little thinner than texture paste, about a little thicker than just the gesso that I have, but I'm thinking, okay, I've never done this through a stencil, but I'm going to give it a try. So I grab the palette knife and I'm putting it through the stencil, and I'm not sure if it's going to run underneath, make a big mess, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. Now, this Shimmery Goodness is, as it says, it has this lovely iridescent shine to it. So I'm thinking, okay, not only is it going to be white, we're going to have texture because it's not flat like white paint would be. And it's also going to have this iridescent quality, which is going to be very lovely on a canvas, especially with this dark background. Now, I wasn't sure if I was going to do the grasses part of this with it, but I thought, you know what, just go ahead, do it. I had absolutely no idea, like I said at the beginning, what I was going to create. This canvas took just under an hour, start to finish. Now I'm thinking I was going to stamp words on. I have live, love, laugh stamps, and I was going to use those, but I just didn't like that idea. But I have these bigger stamps, and they're grunge letters. I believe I got them at Michael's, but Tim Holtz has a set, and I'll put a link to that in the description box. And I'm going to spell out the word joy in those circles. There happens to be 3 of them. If I had planned this out, I might have done wish, and I would have put 4 circles, but I didn't know where I was going. And so then I decide, you know what, I need a lighter background here. So I grab my gesso and I'm pushing it back. All that color that I worked on in there, I'm going to push it out. And these circles are going to become a bit of a focal point for this canvas. Now, as you see, it's not perfect coverage, and you are getting texture because of the layers of paper that are underneath it. It would have different texture if it was straight to canvas. So off camera, I did end up giving it another coat, but it would have been equally acceptable just to leave it as it was. So then I took my punch and I punched out kind of a mask, and I'm going to use my script stamp and my archival ink and stamp script on each of the circles. Now you can use any texture stamp here. You don't have to use script stamp. It's one of my favorites, and it definitely goes in my must-have list. But you could use music. You could use any textured one that you like. So there are my letters, joy, and I'm just placing them. And then just stamping with archival ink. For the longest time I had black StazOn, but I really like archival ink so much better. I have way more success with it. The StazOn seemed to dry a lot, and I was constantly re-inking it. You know, this I just have more success. So here I'm just using a angle brush, and I'm floating acrylics, the float technique, to kind of shade around this. I don't want it to be so stark white, and I want to introduce some of that blue, and I'm using the Prussian blue here and going along the inside of the circle. Now you can build up this color and make it darker, but you need to stop and dry it in between. Otherwise you're just going to be shifting around the paint and ending up with a mess. So then I'm taking and doing the exact same thing, but on the outside of the circle with the Prussian blue. And while it is darkening it up a little bit, it's not quite, excuse me, quite dark enough. So I grab my Payne's Gray. Now Payne's Gray, while it says gray, is a very dark blue. It has a distinctive blue tone to it. So it's really good for shading if you don't want to go with that stark black, especially if you've got blues and greens or purples or reds in the painting. I'm just shading around the outside edge. But you could do this with a charcoal pencil, with a Stabilo. You can buy a navy blue Stabilo as well as the black. So then I've got these edges, and I just want to kind of, smudge around the outside of this. The intention is that this is going to get popped into a frame, but if you finish the edges, it can sit on a mini easel. You can buy easels of different sizes for display purposes. So I just thought, we'll just get it that way. And I'm kind of using a combination of the Prussian blue and the Payne's Gray. Now those grunge letters didn't stamp perfectly, so I'm just touching it up with the Payne's Gray and a round brush. And I'm just thinning the paint just a smidge. Now I made a mistake, but because everything's acrylic underneath, I can quickly wipe it off and nothing has been reactivated. Now on the right-hand side, I was going to put some of the onion blossoms, and I was going to maybe splatter, but then I fought the urge to do it. I kind of like having it darker on that side. It really appeals to me. So I grabbed my fine liner and I signed my name with it, and there I'm just popping it into an 8x10 frame just to show you how wonderful it looks. And then I go around the circles with the fine liner, and that kind of gives it a very interesting look.